Okay, hello everybody. I'm glad that you are here for our Negotiating Your Best Deal class. Whether you're joining us live right now or watching the recorded version, this is intended to be a really important class for you regarding one of the most important things that we do as realtors, which is negotiating.
So today we want to cover three topics and then talk about homework. So there are people that we negotiate with, and each one of these negotiations that we go through is so important to any deal. Negotiating with other agents is important and very important. We want to just talk about a couple of ideas when negotiating with other agents. Negotiating the best list price is something that we're going to talk about. This also kind of bleeds into our listing presentation and listing process, but we really want to focus on the negotiation piece of it today. And then we're going to talk about negotiating your commission, again, connected with the seller process, but something that we really want to talk about the importance of that negotiation as well. And then we'll talk about what we're going to look at for homework for Tuesday.
So we've all heard this phrase, that guy can sell ice to an Eskimo. And this always bothers me when I hear that, because that's not a true salesperson. That's a con man. That's not what we're here. We have an honorable profession that is super important to a lot of people's life. Nicole and I just did a deal yesterday, or actually I think it completed today, where we're really making a difference in two people's lives by how we, among other things, negotiated a best deal actually for both parties. Everybody's super excited, and it's important to have that role, but it's not about convincing people to do stuff they don't want to do.
That's right. It's like selling screen doors for a submarine. So a true salesperson is really finding and filling a genuine need. So there is a reason for what it is that we are selling. We're really filling this need. And it's willing to lose the deal for the right reasons. We talk about that a lot. You know, I just had an opportunity to take on a great listing, pretty unreasonable client, really wanted to go in overpriced. And I knew that it would be a losing battle for both of us. And I chose not to take the listing. And I have to tell you, he was pretty stunned that I said no. And I think that it built up a lot of respect. So I have to say, he brought it on with another agent. Nothing happened. And I got a call just a couple of days ago saying, hey, I'm taking it off the market. Will you list it at what we originally talked about? So we want to talk about that too. And then also, as Rick just mentioned, it's a role of honor. I mean, we really are doing something in sales to really create something better for the people that we're dealing with. So it is a role of honor.
Okay, so negotiating with other agents is a big part of what we do. And it's something that we don't necessarily, or maybe we think about it when we're at that final part of, you know, maybe presenting an offer or receiving an offer. But this is where we really create value. And especially when I'm talking in a listing appointment, this is what's going to lead to also getting my highest commission, because this is where I'm painting a picture for them of this is where the difference is made. Of course, anybody can sell a house. The question is who can get you the best deal, and knowing how to interact with other agents is a big part of that.
So the idea of negotiating with other agents is it starts long before any one deal. And what that means is really building a relationship with other agents. And I think we all have this in our markets. We know each other, and we build not just a reputation, but we also build trust and realize that we're going to be able to make this deal work. It's really important to be kind and helpful to other agents. There are agents that we deal with that we know are just so impossible to deal with, but we try to keep that professional front with them, because it could only happen if we happen to get in contract with them, and we don't want to blow that up. This one I love. This deal may not be a one-night stand, which means you might go through a deal with one person. I think we've all dealt with it, and we have maybe gone through multiple dealings with this specific or an individual agent, and that we kind of get to know each other, and it makes the deal that much easier to go through.
Yeah, it also means that even if it's going sideways, we have a professional responsibility to maintain our professionalism, knowing that there could be another deal down the road, that we don't want to have a negative effect on another client because of what we did, our behavior in another transaction. A quick shout out to Nicole here on the one night stand here. Just want to make sure that we highlighted that also.
Great graphic.
Listen, now, before accepting or writing another offer, always look up the other agent to see what their experience is and their volume and how long they've been doing things, or at least go back a few years and get a sense of where do they typically do deals, how many do they do, because this is going to give you not only from a negotiating standpoint, a sense of their experience level, but also how much you might need to be helpful to them, or not, or what you might expect from them based on what you see there. So if that's not a common practice for you now, always look up, if you don't know the agent, always look them up, see where they're coming from, how long have they been around, where are they doing their deals, how many do they do, because it'll give you context on and how to interact with people.
Information is important. It's just like knowing everything that you can about a property before you put in an offer. Knowing as much as you can about an agent before you get into contract can be really helpful.
Exactly.
So when we engage with other agents, here are a couple of things to keep in mind. Every word matters in communication, and it really is clear. Rick and I do this between each other all the time, is understanding what we're trying to say. And Rick will say to me, now, do you mean this? Or I'll say to him, now, you're trying to say that. And the idea of really communicating completely and properly makes such a big difference as you're negotiating through a deal or dealing with other agents.
Exactly. And in that process, what's important is that you want to try and get as much information as possible about what their client's circumstances are. And you want to give up as little information as possible about your clients. And there's an art to this, but it's really helpful from the negotiating standpoint in terms of finding out, how can you make the best deal for your clients?
So the other thing, and this happens so often, that you are getting kind of in the middle or getting into the negotiation or closing or close to closing, or even as you're negotiating up front. It's really important to not get too comfortable with what's going on. It's important to constantly be on point in what you're saying and how you're saying it, so that everything is professional and doesn't get too comfortable. When that happens, sometimes things are misunderstood and things can get a little bit cloudy.
Well, the other thing that also can happen is that you are maybe not remembering, oh my gosh, I'm in the middle of a negotiation here. From where I'm sitting, as soon as an agent talks to me about any one of my clients, pre-escrow all the way through the entire thing, I'm always paying attention to, I'm negotiating with this. No matter how comfortable I get with this person, I want to be professional and kind and all that stuff. I want to care about them. I want to take care of them. But I also am thinking about my client first and listening for the clues of what's going on with their client. And what happens is, if you get too comfortable, you can let your guard down. All of a sudden you miss something. Let me give you an example. I'm negotiating a deal with somebody and they are asking for some kind of repair. The heater doesn't work, whatever. This is a house that I'm representing the seller. They're representing the buyer. They've come to me with some kind of request. And prior to me going to the seller with this information, I say to the agent, in the context of a very comfortable, hey, how's it going, yuck yuck conversation, very not defensive about the circumstances. I'm not pre-telling them they're never going to get the money or anything like that, but somewhere in there I'm going to say something like, hey, just out of curiosity, Kathleen, is this a deal breaker for your clients, or can you give me a sense of where we're at here? Now, that's a very comfortable, casual conversation. And you wouldn't believe how many times an agent will go, oh, no, they love this house. They're going to get it no matter what. They're just seeing if they can get some money or whatever, right? And that's important information for me to then go back to my seller and say, hey, here's what they're asking for, and here's the context. So you don't actually have to give them everything. Maybe you give them half, or maybe you give them something, but these guys are not going to walk away from this deal. That is another part about not getting too comfortable.
So in that same vein, be prepared to answer questions like, is your client willing to pay more? Is this a deal breaker? This is what Rick just talked about, or how many offers are you expecting? And think about how you're going to answer those very carefully, because you don't want to give too much. You want to still be able to negotiate. And if you say, is this a deal breaker for your client, for instance, you need to be able to answer it in such a way that you're not giving up the deal, but you're still able to kind of keep things on moving along.
Yeah, exactly. You want to have prepared answers like, is this a deal breaker for your clients? I really don't know. This seems to be very important to them. That's all you need to say. Or how many offers are you expecting? This is one that if you're sometimes newer agents feel like they're supposed to, hype it up or be, you want to be honest with where you're at. You don't want to say you're expecting a bunch of offers if you're not. That can totally backfire, and all of a sudden you end up with nothing because people think, oh, there's too many offers. And if everybody's had the client who goes, I'm not going to compete if I'm just, maybe against one other offer, but I'm not going to be competing in a big thing. All of a sudden you lose the one deal that maybe you would have had. And at the same time, you don't want to make it sound like nothing's going on at all for the obvious reasons that you don't want to do that. So honesty is generally the best policy. Okay, don't get stuck in the who's right and who's wrong trap. Again, this goes back to that point of negotiating where this is usually happening when the buyer is asking for credit. And it's super common. We'll go back to the I want a heater example. Super common for the buyer to go, well, I have to have a heater. That's obvious, right? And the seller's going, hey, the heater works. And just because the guy said that the report is, the heater's beyond its useful life, it still works. And you get people get wrapped up into who's right and who's wrong. And what we want to take it down to is, it's not about right and wrong anymore. We're at the finish line. And this is where, again, and we talk about this in the listing appointment, we want to know what our client's real motivation is and take them back to, this is what it's going to be like when we close the deal. Let's not get too wrapped up in the little nitty gritty about a heater or some kind of credit. I know that what you're really trying to do is move to Southern California to be closer to your grandchildren. We are that close to doing it. How much of this do you want to get in the way of that happening, right? And that kind of resets their brain, and they may be a little bit less frustrated. They might be still a little bit frustrated, but they're less frustrated, and they're more focused on the bigger picture rather than, whether their heater works or not. That's right. The other thing is, don't speak for your clients, even if you already have talked to them. You want to use things like, well, I haven't spoken to my clients, or I don't know what my clients will say, but this is what I'm thinking, so that you kind of have a back door that you can get out of, that even if you are wrong or they change their mind, that you've not committed to anything for your clients in the process of having a conversation with another agent.
So negotiating the best list price. This, again, is something that we will be talking about as we're talking about the listing process. But this is a part of negotiation that we really want to kind of bring home in the negotiation in piece. And part of this whole thing is really helping your clients understand what the market is, what things look like, and what they can expect. And you want to lead them to a place that they are going to kind of be in your camp of where we believe the price is going to be, but it's allowing them to be the one that makes that decision. So it's also important to understand the highest net price principle with your client.
So to go into it a little bit further, the highest net price principle is the idea that, yes, we are going to ask you to spend a little bit of money maybe to get your house ready. Yes, we're going to ask you to pay us a little bit more money than you might be able to get with another agent. But at the end of the day, we are going to get you the highest net price as a result of all these things that we're suggesting that you do. And that's helping them understand that net price conversation.
So it's important for them to understand that. And one of the things that we can do, again, to look at that, the bottom line, the money that you are going to be getting after the sale is, here's some money that we may have to be putting into the property to begin with to prep the property. However, the return on that is going to be X amount. And that sometimes is hard for people to understand, but when you can clearly point out that investing in updating the property before we put on the market is going to up the amount of money that you're going to get at the back end.
Yeah, and I like to say things like, I'm not going to suggest that you spend any money getting your house ready unless I feel like you're going to get a 3 times or plus your return on that. So if I say, hey, I think you should spend $10,000 putting in new flooring, I'm expecting that to return be worth $30,000 on the back end or the sale price. The only exception to that is deal breaker things like foundations that need to be repaired that could stop a deal from happening in the first place. You repair your foundation, you're not going to get 3 times your money. Same thing with roofs, same things with heaters. These are things that, you know, people expect you to have a roof, a foundation, and a heater that is already good. So you're not going to get a big pop out of that. You don't invite your friends over to see your new foundation and have dinner. So the other thing is staging. You know, we just went through this with some clients this last week where it's a divorce, money's scarce. They really push back on whether we should stage or not. And I don't think that staging belongs in every single house. If you have a total fixer, an absolute piece of crap, I don't believe in staging that kind of house. If it's a contractor special, whatever, like that is what it is. But this house that we had, which is a lot like a lot of houses, it wasn't super pristine. It was a 20 to 25-year-old house that looked reasonable, but it didn't look amazing. And the pop that this house was going to get by having staging kind of distracting from the tiredness of this house, and at the same time painting a picture of how beautiful this house could look with the right furniture in it, it totally made sense for them to spend $5,000 to stage this house. But if you're not tuned into that, if you don't have the ability to explain that to people, it can be real challenging. And it would be real easy to just not have the conversation. We don't make more money because people stage. We're not getting money from the staging company. It's just there for their benefit. And we really had to they really pushed back on that. And I just wouldn't let them. I said, listen, you can do whatever you want, but here, let me line this up for you again. And they said, okay, let's do it. And I'm really confident that it's going to be, that they're going to be super happy with it.
So pre-inspections is another really important thing, depending on what your market is. Some markets, the market I'm in, pre-inspections are not even heard of, which is really difficult, because in other parts of the country, pre-inspections are expected, and it can make such a difference in having that pre-inspection ready as people are looking at the property, because they know what it is that they're purchasing. And it also helps that whole negotiation thing when it comes time to putting a price down of what we want to pay for the home, because you're already showing potential disclosures of things that need to happen with the property. So I think that the idea of people really understanding the importance of pre-inspections is incredibly important.
Yeah, what we're looking for there is the big things that you would get stuck within an escrow with a buyer, too late to do anything about it, and now you're trapped with a buyer who has this gigantic disclosure you have to negotiate. It's way better to know all that stuff before you go in. It's kind of like a little insurance policy to keep you out of some big negotiation once you've already agreed on a contract.
That's right. So your added value. These are things that you as an agent can provide that are really going to show that you are marketing a property in the best that you possibly can, the best way that you possibly can. And it's going to set you apart from other agents. So professional photography, drone video, 3D walkthroughs are really important. Especially if you're in a market where you have people that are not necessarily going to be able to go through the home because maybe they don't live there yet, but they're moving there. It's going to give them the opportunity to look at the home and get a perception of what it is, and then probably book that flight so that they can come and take it.
Yeah, professional copywriters. Somebody writes descriptions. We have somebody that we send them the pictures. We give them the highlights of the things that we want them to make sure they include in the description. like the location, like something, how close it is to San Francisco, whatever that is, and then let them make it sound really pretty and nice, because I, for one, am not a writer. The professional network that we already have, the pre-networking, all those things are things that you add value. And the biggest thing is that you are the best negotiator. This is the big thing that you bring to the table that they can't get somewhere else. One of the things that we're trying to get help people understand, and we'll talk about this all the time, more in this one and also in our listing presentation, is that the general public looks at agents like they're a commodity. Like you're just buying sugar, and whatever the best deal you can get is where you should go. And helping them, and they don't know any better. Nobody's teaching them. So it's our job to help them understand that we're not sugar, right? That there's a difference from one agent to another, and that's, otherwise, why would they pay us more? Why would they pay us anything, for that matter? So tension points. So this is kind of my thing that I use. So I doubt that you've kind of heard this anywhere else, but to me, there's two tension points when you're trying to sell a home, at least right now. And this might be driven a little bit by the demand in the market. And so as there becomes less demand, maybe both of these tension points don't necessarily exist. However, I will tell you that I've used this in soft markets as well. And the tension point idea is that there's basically two. There's one tension point prior to going on the market, where there's no days on market clicking, right? Your piece of meat is not getting stinkier and stinkier sitting on the counter, and people are going, "What's wrong? Why isn't that house selling?" And this also gives us the opportunity to test the market and see what do people think about this. And so we utilize the coming soon. If your MLS has a coming soon, we utilize your professional networks, top agent network, other things like that. If your company has any kind of coming soon or whatever, and then just your actual network of all the agents that and letting them know, hey, I've got this house coming up, or if you have a listing in a specific neighborhood, you look up who's sold a lot in that neighborhood and let them know that you've got this house. And then the tension part of it is, hey, we've priced it where we think it's correct. If you want us to take a preemptive prior to going on the market offer, we're willing to consider that, but it needs to include some kind of premium for us not exposing it to the market and therefore potentially getting multiple offers. So that's a tension point. The next tension point is the more traditional one that not everybody does, but a lot of people do, which is waiting for a certain period. In our case, we list homes on a Monday. We do a broker tour during the week. We do at least one open house, ideally on the weekend, and then we look at open offers on the following Tuesday. So we have 8 days of marketing. We won't consider a preemptive offer during that period. And then we have the offer date where there's another tension point, and hopefully at least two people want the house. So helping people, so that's something that we always do. And then helping the clients understand that's where we're creating some added value for them. Then they start going, oh, okay, this is different. I haven't heard this from somebody else. I'm starting to understand that I'm not just buying sugar. That's not just a commodity, that there's different nuances on how you get the best price for your house. So off-market listings, we just talked about that. And then offer date, I just skipped that whole slide. We'll go to the next one. Sorry about that.
So again, talking about the list price, this is a negotiation with clients and what that's going to be. And this is the idea of what we talked about a little bit earlier, of really showing your skill as an agent, of really understanding what the market is and really helping them hone in on a price that is going to work for that property. So it's going to happen by working on a CMA that's going to make sense for your clients, that they're going to see what the properties are in the neighborhood or nearby that are really supporting the list price that you're looking for. And one of the questions that I love to get at right out of the gate is, what are you thinking that you want to list your home for? Because that's going to set you up to understand where they're coming from. And they might be hearing from other agents, from neighbors, from friends, oh, your house is worth at least this or that. And that's where having a really strong CMA is going to be important, because they could be way up here thinking, oh, my house is worth, $20 million, and it's really worth about 250,000. And so it really is having the information to support what that's going to be, is going to be. So I love to ask that question. What are you hoping to get for this property? Because it prepares you for what you need to do to get them into the space that they need to be. So it's also using,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
It's also using all of that kind of information correctly too. So and the last point is showing the advantage of correct pricing, to not overprice or necessarily underprice depending on what the market is, but to really hit that sweet spot with the list price. And they understand that they can expect perhaps it to go over, or what their chances are of where they're going to land in terms of a purchase price.
Yeah, and if you haven't seen the house, and if you haven't had the conversation with them about finding out what they're hoping for, I would not put a price on a CMA. We're going to a listing right after this. There will be no pricing on the CMA because that's ridiculous. We don't know enough, right, to put it out there.
I wouldn't even give a range.
Yeah, exactly.
If you haven't seen the property, they can tell you that it's the most beautiful thing in the world, but until you see it, and we'll talk about that again when we do our listing process.
Exactly, and this is part of that too. There is no exact price, right? We know that, but we need to help them understand that. I think one of the things that's real easy to do is we do this every day. We have these conversations, but who we're talking to, they have not sold a bunch of houses. Maybe even if they've sold 2 or 3 houses, that's still not a bunch, right? So they don't really know what they're doing. And we have to remember when we're talking to them that they don't understand, and it's our job to help them understand. So for example, there is no exact price, right? And we can talk about what that looks like. Give them a range. This is after you've had the conversation. This is after you've seen the house. That will help them pick the right one with the data about the pricing, and help them understand who picks the final price, right? Who picks it? It's not me, right? It's not Kevin. It's not Nicole. It's none of us on this. It's also not the seller. It's the buyer, right? It's the market that's going to pick that final range. So we want to put them in a position where we're going to hopefully get somebody to pay more than what is reasonably expected on the comps. That's what I talk to people about, is I want to figure out a way to get people to pay more than what the comps suggest makes sense. And here, the kind of lining up, here's all the things we do to get them to do that. And then have the conversation about the tension points, which we already talked about, and then help them understand that risk of pricing something too high. A lot of people think that this is like Craigslist or selling another high ticket item. Well, we'll just start here, and if it doesn't go well, we'll just lower the price. And that works fine, except for this, the days on market part. The days on market is what kills that whole idea. When you go on Craigslist or any of these sites about cars or any high ticket items, there's nothing on there that indicates how long it's been sitting out there, and everybody's going, nope, 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 nope. But on a house, it is. And with a house, it gets worse and worse. And if they don't understand how that works, it's going to be really challenging to get them to price it the right way to start with.
So negotiating your commission, and this is one of Rick's favorite things to talk about. And I love it. It's to be excited to have this conversation, because so many of us dread the idea of talking about commission. And it's because there are so many discount brokers out there that say, hey, we'll do it for, 2%, 4% total. And so part of this is really understanding that you are the best possible realtor out there to be able to be doing the job for them. So part of our job is to explain, which we have just kind of gone through, of the things that we can use to say, here's why you need to use me, because I am going to get you the best possible price. And there's a way that we like to use to go through that.
Yeah, I mean, this is the best part of the conversation. And if you're sitting there going, no, this is not the best part. This is the part I totally get it. I have been that person. I know that it's hard, because we're talking about a lot of money, right? If we're doing $1 million house, that's $60,000. You think, like, how could I possibly ask somebody to pay me $60,000 to do something, right? And when you start understanding the value that you bring to their net sales price at the end by all the great things that you do, again, I go back to the one that we just did yesterday. I sat with a client who was, and I'll get into what I tell them, but I gave him my commission and they asked for a discount. And I said, listen, that is not how I operate. And if you would like somebody who I can give you a list of agents who will do things for less money. But at the end of the day, I'm going to get you the highest net price, right? And what happened yesterday was they were going to be giddy if they could get 1.2 million, and we got $1,250,000 for them, which paid for almost their entire, not just my commission, but half of the commission of the other agent, who also happens to be me. So, all right, timing. So this is important, right? Nicole and I were at a shred event the other day. Guy walks up, he's not our client, he just sees our sign. He's like, yeah, well, I'm thinking about maybe hiring somebody, and he gives me the sob story about whatever. And then he says, but I'm not paying more than, what did he say, Nicole? 2% or some ridiculous thing. I don't know what the number was. And I said, listen, we don't sound like we're the right person for you. Like, this is what we do. We have all this, these things that we do. But that was a mistake, because the timing of that conversation, he has no context. He has no context, right? If somebody calls you up and they go, well, yeah, I'm thinking about having you for a listing appointment, but what do you charge? I need to know that first, right? And we've all had that conversation. And what I tell people is, listen, there's flexibility in ultimately what I charge, but for me to just give you a commission without knowing your circumstances and what your context is would be irresponsible. I will tell you this, that when you're done talking to me, you will be pleased with what you've learned, and you will not at all be disappointed in what I charge for the commission. And I just leave it at that. And that generally gets them, they're like, okay, that sounds good. A lot of it is just being confident in what you're doing.
That's right. And part of that we have, that was the last point, is having a script, at least having in your mind what it is that you want to say. It may not be word for word, but having those scripts kind of in the back of your head as you're going through these conversations makes it so much easier. In fact, for homework this week, we're going to be kind of having you talk with each other to kind of go through scripts and talk through it, because a lot of that practice stuff, even though we've all done it 100 times, going through that process with another agent and getting feedback can be really, really useful. And also sharing, hey, I like to say this, and that might help you. That interaction with this group, I think, can be really satisfying in adjusting your scripts in a way that's going to be even more successful than you currently are.
Exactly.
So it's so easy to do the math in your head. Okay. And this is kind of what Rick just said, $30,000 for $100 million house. And you can say, am I worth that? Well, yes, you are. And maybe more. So never doubt what your worth is, because as a professional, and the professionals that you are, you know what you're going to be able to do for this client and for the sale of this house. And yes, you are worth it.
Okay, so this is what we talked about earlier. The seller does not know what they are doing, right? They've not done this before. And so they're looking at us as a commodity unless we give them another reason to do that. So what criteria do they use to make a final decision on who the realtor is? And you have the responsibility to help them understand this principle of penny wise, pound foolish in the context of all the things that we've been talking about.
So go ahead.
Go ahead. Sorry.
So the idea of, the difference between 2.5% and 3% when you're talking about $1 million house is $5,000. And I think that idea between 2.5% and 3% can be, feel astronomical to a seller. But when you get down to it, that it's just 5,000. And as an agent, I'm going to, help you more, make more that than that. So therefore, it really it's a nominal thing.
Yeah, you could say things like, so after you've lined up all of the things that you talk about with the pre-inspections and staging the home, it starts long before that you help you understand that all of the things that we do from the beginning to the end, and all the conversations that we know how to have and the ones that we know not how to have, or the ones that we know not to have, and there's going to be an opportunity for me to make you way more than $5,000 in this transaction. So when it gets time to discuss commission, I say this, and Nicole has sat there and listened to this 50 times. So the commission that you pay as a seller pays both me and the agent who bring in the buyer. I charge 3% for my side of that, but you have the choice to pay the buyer's agent 2.5 or 3. Some version of that is what I say to them when it comes to the conversation about commission. And I learned this many years ago. When I first heard it, I'm like, God, that sounds nice. I wonder if that works. And you know what? About 90% of the time, the entire conversation becomes about, do I pay 2.5 or 3% to the buyer's agent? Rarely does it even come up whether I'm getting 3% or not. And I rarely do I not get 3% for my side. So that is a super easy way to skip over all of that like angst around how do I get the right amount of commission.
Let me add this as well. We have clients, all of us, that we have done multiple deals with. And in the early days of my career, I would say, hey, we've worked together in the past. Instead of 3%, I'll do it for 2.5 for you because we've been doing this. And I quickly realized that the reason that they're using me is because I get a really good price for them. So it doesn't matter if I've done one, this is a first deal with you, or the 50th deal with you, my commission is always 3%. And we can decide what we're going to do for the other side. So I think we all need to look at ourselves as these professional agents, and we don't discount for anybody. It is what we do.
Exactly. And I would even go further that if you are ending up with a project like Sandy has had a couple recently, where she had to do a lot of work, think about doing 3.5%. If you're managing a deal and you're going to be a project manager, you should consider 3.5% and 2.5%. Okay, so little highlight for the Daily Navigator. Just first of all, you guys are doing a great job, and keep going. There's I know it starts to become like, man, I've been doing this for a while. I'm kind of getting bored with it. The impact that it'll have, just like going back to the compound effect that some of you read with us last quarter, it does work over a period of time. And we wanted to highlight today the signature part, right? This is kind of the version of, this is your word to yourself and to your accountability group. I'm going to do these things. This is a contract I'm making with everybody that day. So it's important to sign it, and it's important to mean it when you sign it. That's the intent of having the signature on there.
So homework for this week. Here's what we'd like for you to do. We'd like for you, the people that are on the call right now, that are live with us, is to set up a call with this group at some point, maybe 30 minutes, 40 minutes, as much time as you can take, and really do a little bit of role playing back and forth with the idea of negotiating commissions, negotiating price, questions that have come up with dealing with a buyer or a listing agent, and really talk through that, because we learn by each other's experience. And I think that this is homework, but I think it's something that's going to be really powerful for each of you. And then we also want to remind you to continue reviewing at least 20 contacts a day in your CRM to work through those. We'd love for you to be able to get through the majority of your CRM when this quarter ends. And we're getting up to the end of or close to our 60 days. So review your 30, 60, 90-day plan. And are you at a point that maybe you overstretched what you thought you could do, and so you need to make an adjustment? Or are you maybe doing more than you thought, and maybe you need to adjust something to make it a little bit more than you had originally planned? And that's what I think is really important with any business plan or any 30, 60, 90-day plan, is be willing to make adjustments if needed. And then review your report card. We talked about that yesterday, and it's something that I think is really powerful for us to know where we're moving. So bring all of these items with you on Tuesday when we do our Lifetime Coach. And I really look forward to the discussion about the conversations that you had when you do a little role playing with negotiations and commissions and dealing with listing agent, buyer's agent.